Hello, everyone, and welcome to Force 13 Live. We are here tracking two potentially catastrophic storms, one in the making in the Western Pacific, and one currently going on in the Eastern Pacific. We have Hurricane Willa, which the National Hurricane Center has recently put up to a potentially catastrophic Category 5 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 160 miles per hour, a minimum central pressure of 925 millibars. And we also have Tropical Storm Yutu in the Western Pacific. That is currently 60 miles per hour via the JMA. Uh, I am Devin Williams here, and I am actually joined by Nathan Foy. If you can say something.
Good afternoon, evening, whatever time it is around everywhere right now.
So
It's
I'm
just ticked over to 10 a.m. over there, hasn't it, on the Pacific coast? But they're using mountain time still, I think, so that would make
Yep.
it 11. Anyway,
Yeah, they are.
pedantries aside, um, Devon's hosting to today's stream because I've been caught busy doing all kinds of other things, as well as storm updates on these storms right now. And I mean, the first thing that I kept seeing in the last 24 hours was all of these Patricia comparisons. Just no.
Yeah, no, this storm, although it is a very similar size to Patricia, this storm is really not even in the same ballpark as Hurricane Patricia. I just pulled up right now. You can see satellite imagery, animated satellite imagery of Hurricane Willa, and you can see it doesn't have the cloud tops anywhere close to Patricia. It doesn't have the eye temperature anywhere close to Patricia. This is not Patricia by any means, and it's honestly surprising that they even put it up to Category 5, taking a look at how the storm looks. It is currently undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle, taking a look at the latest microwave imagery. And what you'll see here is, even though this is kind of low resolution, you'll still get the idea that you have this very tight circle right here in the middle. That's the inner eye. And then you can see this very broad circle of darker blues and reds out here. And that's very much showing the outer eye. And what will happen is that the eye will seem to degrade, the storm will weaken a little bit, and as the new eye comes in, it'll regain its intensity. However,
Yeah, a little later, I want to talk about the reasoning behind it reaching Category 5 status, but I think first it's probably more apt for you to talk about the warnings.
yep, and that's what I'm actually getting to because I just pulled up the cone, and you can see here it's got about roughly a day and a half before it ends up making landfall along the coast of Mexico. And the warnings that are currently out, we have a hurricane warning in effect from San Blas to Mazatlan, including Las Islas Marias. And we also have a tropical storm warning from Playa Perula to San Blas and north of Mazatlan to Bahia Temp. Oh boy, I messed that name up. Bahia Tempehuaya. Oh man, I'm messing that one up. Tempehuaya. Tempehuaya. There you go. Um,
Bahia Tempehuaya.
yeah, Bahia Tempehuaya. There we go. So hurricane warning means that hurricane conditions are expected somewhere within the warning area within the next 36 hours. And as I just said, and you could see here on the cone for Willa, 36 hours is the expected landfall time frame. And most likely, very much like Patricia, there's a good chance that the storm's going to weaken quite a bit before making landfall. And this is another point I want to bring up here. Here is a topographic map of the area of Mexico, and you can see very clearly here in the landfall area, it rises up into very high mountains really quickly. These white tops here all go up above 5,000 meters, 16,000 feet. Um, so we're talking very similar terrain to, let's say, Taiwan here. And you'll notice that a lot of powerful typhoons will weaken before hitting Taiwan. probably going to be a similar thing here. How much it'll weaken, really don't know. But probably the place that will see the strongest of the storm will be the Islas Marias Islands off the coast of Mexico.
I'm really concerned about those particular islands because they may be the only place that gets the storm's eye wall and even eye, whilst it's still, category 4-ish.
Yeah. I don't know what the population of those islands look like, but
There is a small town there. Yeah, it must only be in the thousands, the single digit thousands, I would imagine.
so probably not exactly the greatest infrastructure there either. One would probably assume from that. So,
Hmm.
uh, well, obviously you want to get off the island if you can. I probably wouldn't want to stay on those islands.
By
It,
plane,
yeah,
get
if
going.
if you can get going now, that would be fantastic. The actual landfall area still has some time yet before conditions really start going downhill. Again, this is a very, very tiny storm. Tropical storm force winds barely extending out 100 miles from the center, and hurricane force winds might extend 20 miles out, maybe 20 miles out. So that would be roughly 160, 165 kilometers from the center, and for tropical storm force winds, and uh, around 30 to 35 kilometers for hurricane force winds.
Yeah, not large by hurricane standards, but I wonder if maybe it's, I mean, I don't have any numbers in front of me how this compares with those previous very strong storms at this time of year. Maybe not so much Patricia, but Kenner, I'm curious about.
Yeah, Kenna's probably the best comparison at this point because, again, very similar time of year. And it's currently at a
Is that?
similar intensity. I think Kenna was a little bit stronger, maybe 165 miles an hour at this point. But another noted thing, Kenna weakened before landfall as well. So you see the trends of these late season storms that aren't exactly that big heading towards Mexico. They tend to weaken before landfall. Now, that isn't to say that major hurricane force winds aren't going to make it ashore in coastal areas, but it's likely not going to carry that far inland.
Yeah, that's the main point because we can't rule out the storm staying pretty strong right the way up until landfall. The National Hurricane Center in between their dots before and after landfall. Um, sort of, I mean, we don't, obviously reading into it, they don't mean to say it, but you could interpolate that they're going with 155-mile-an-hour landfall at this point.
Yeah, and that's probably unlikely. Probably most likely will be somewhere in the region of 120 to 140, depends on how much the land interaction actually ends up happening. Of course, Patricia weakened from a 200 plus mile an hour hurricane to not even a category 5 at landfall. Um, it could weaken that significantly. I think Kenna, I think,
50-mile-an-hour weakening there.
yeah, I think Kenna didn't weaken as much. So it the land interaction tends to be a wild card with these systems. You don't really know exactly just how much they're going to weaken. Uh, it's really going to depend on how the system fares throughout its eyewall replacement cycle that it's currently going through.
But didn't Kenner do a bit more of a wide angle sweep into land? Didn't it move further out to sea before coming back in?
Yes, Kenna. If if you could see my cursor here, I think they can see my cursor. They cannot. Um, but what would happen is that Kenna was well off to the north and west of this, where this system is right now, actually. Well, maybe not north, but well off to the west of the system, and then actually made a sharp bend to the north and east. So that's what happened with Kenna. And
And
meanwhile, with
this is even more of a feat than Kenner was, in my opinion, because SSTs are about maybe half a degree to 1 degree lower than they were for Kenner.
yeah, and they're almost 2 degrees lower than they were for Patricia. So that should tell you that this storm's not exactly in the most favorable conditions sea surface temperatures wise. It ended up blowing up to this borderline category 5 in waters that typically aren't supportive of category 5 hurricanes, but yet here we are, we're looking at one right now, 160 miles an hour. Um and yeah,
Now,
it,
I,
it's
I want to talk about this then. I think the National Hurricane Center were justified in going with 160 miles per hour because it had looked that way for about 2 or 3 hours prior. But it's sod's law, isn't it? As soon as they changed the advisory to 160 miles an hour, it started that IWA replacement cycle and looked terrible.
yep. And I can actually end up playing a little bit more of the imagery so the viewers could end up seeing. I'll play it since, let's say, 2 Zulu. That'll give us a larger loop. And you can see it here as it gets up to what looked like to be a category 5. Now, you say that it was supportive of it. I think it could have been, might not have been. It's really borderline.
Well, we
Um,
were going on and on about this last night. Um,
yeah,
we had a late shift due to how the storm was going. I thought at the time it was going to get to category 5 at about 4 Zulu, but it just didn't quite get there in the end.
yep,
And I agree that it didn't get there. Then it didn't look so good this morning, but then it intensified again. But the cloud tops were so much better at about 12 Zulu today, 6 hours ago, than
yeah.
they
I
were
noticed that
last night.
there is a pretty good burst of cloud tops that happened. It
So, how strong would you say it was last night?
So you could see the images here. You could see the cloud tops booming up right here at around 12 Zulu. And then they were pretty much all but gone by 15. So, I mean, I don't think
Just
that's,
when they put out the update.
yeah, it's a borderline call. It can go either way. Honestly, it could have gone either way. I don't think that a storm with that bad of an eye should be considered to be a category 5, but it's a borderline call at that point. Uh, Recon has officially done a U-turn, so we are not going to get an aircraft into this storm today.
I was really looking forward to that, I have to say.
I think everyone was, but Recon has unfortunately done a U-turn.
What on earth happened there?
I have no idea. Anyways, one of the viewers is now asking for opinions on Tropical Storm Yutu, and we're not going to ignore this storm either.
Oh, yes.
Here is what it looks like right now. As I said earlier, the official number on this storm by the JMA, 60 miles per hour. The JTWC is actually lower than that. And I gotta say, it looks very, very, very impressive. The cloud tops minus 90 degrees Celsius, which is actually pretty unprecedented for the West Pacific. You usually don't see cloud tops that cold in the West Pacific.
Reminds me of
And
a balloon.
yeah, and you could see the area of the minus 80-degree cloud tops expanding there in the latest frames, and it really looks like that this storm is starting to really get together. It should probably be a typhoon by now, and it is expected to rapidly intensify.
With that presentation, it reminds me of some of those late/early season storms. You may as well call it off season. You know, the low latitude that go on sometimes near the Philippines. I'm thinking Typhoon Mekala.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, it kind of does. It kind of does look like one of those storms right now. Something that gets pulled right off of the equator. Where the convection's really high. You got a lot of convective potential energy there, and you end up getting these really tall cloud tops. But now this storm is in the middle of open waters in pretty warm sea surface temperatures, and
29 or so.
yep, and it's heading towards the Marianas Islands, and it is, I think, rightfully expected to become yet another big system here in the Western Pacific. If I
Hooray for the Western Pacific. No sarcasm intended. Of course it was. There's some more questions there.
Yep. Uh, do do we think the Greek alphabet will be used for the East Pacific this season? I'm gonna go with no. That would require 4 more systems to form in the Eastern Pacific.
We might get X next month.
Maybe
Some
X.
weak tropical storm or something. Just not seeing it.
We might get X, maybe Y. The system's already broken the ace record, so who cares?
By the time you get to late October, the East Pack is about to give one last throw of the dice.
And
if it's not already done so by then. Some seasons have ended by now.
There are some seasons that end in August.
Yeah, really?
I think that during the really bad La Nina seasons, usually you'll get a ton of storms in July, and then you'll get some storms in August, and then like maybe 1 or 2 storms for the rest of the year, if I remember correctly. Like the Eastern Pacific is just really weird.
Let's see. Just going to have a little look at that out of my own curiosity. People talk about 2005 being mad busy in the Atlantic. In the East Pack, it had already finished by now, the 20th of October.
Yep. That seems about right.
Just going back through the years there. 1999, October 11th. Not seeing any August yet. Oh, yes, 1995 is the earliest, apparently, ending in late September.
Okay, so but that's also the last storm formed. I'm talking like bulk of the activity here.
Yep.
And yeah, you've seen there's some very early exits to the Eastern Pacific hurricane seasons. This obviously isn't one of them, as we've been in neutral conditions pretty much all year, and now we're transitioning into a minor El Nino. Nothing along the lines of 2015. Don't.
Yet.
Nothing along the lines of 2015.
Yet.
Not yet. It will not be along the lines of 2015. So
no, not likely.
It's going to be nothing along those lines. Anyways, I think this is going to be a good time right now to go back to Willa and repeat what the warnings currently are. We have a hurricane warning in effect from San Blas to Mazatlan, including the Las Islas Marias Islands off the coast of Mexico. And we have tropical storm warnings in effect from Playa Perula to San Blas and north of Mazatlan to Bahia Tempehuaya. So what that pretty much means is that you're going to be experiencing, the hurricane warning area is going to be experiencing hurricane force conditions in the next day and a half or so, as noted here by the National Hurricane Center cone. You're likely not going to get the hurricane force winds until the storm's pretty much right on top of you. The hurricane force wind field, maybe 40 kilometers at most by the time it gets to land. So it's a very small storm. Tropical storm force winds around 160 kilometers from the center. And even then, that is a very small storm. Likely we have Yeah, it's a very small storm as far as that. So, Storm Imagery asks, will Willa cross over into the Gulf of Mexico still as a system? I figured that we are going to get at least one of those questions, so we'll go right to the models here, and we can see here what
You
some of
want to
the
talk about rainfall as well?
Yes. Okay. So, expected rainfall for Mexico, at least from what I've seen from the models, anywhere between 10 to 16 inches, but that's going to be likely very local. The storm's going to dissipate very quickly once it hits the mountains of Mexico. So the circulation is definitely going to dissipate over Mexico. There's no doubt about that. Will it reform going into the Gulf of Mexico? Eh. I it could. Nothing's saying that it can't, but
Looking at models, it
doubtful.
says it's going to be cold core.
Yeah, I don't think so. Mainly because what's going to happen is that the front that's picking it up here is going to end up the trough rather that is picking up here. It's going to end up getting embedded into a trough, and then we're going to have a nor'easter come up the east coast, and we're going to have our first big snowfall event of the year, potentially from Willa. I've seen snowfall predictions already up to about a foot in New England. So we have potentially a significant snowfall event coming from whatever is left of Hurricane Willa. I can pull up the models for that very quickly. Like, well, that won't be far enough out, so I'll just go to total snowfall here. Click on 240, and you can see here we've got, well, this is mainly more up in Maine, but still potentially almost 2 feet of snow in northern parts of Maine, northern parts of New Hampshire, Vermont, and also some snow in my area as well in the Pocono Mountains, 2 to 4 inches from this system. And that's predicted by the GFS. So, of course, that's only one model. That's not everything. And we'll see more as the system comes through. But yeah, potentially Willa might become a nor'easter, bringing a pretty decent amount of snowfall. John Mota wants to know what we think about the Southwest Indian Ocean for this season.
Not sure.
Yeah,
I've not really looked into it yet because we've been so busy in the northern hemisphere to be able to look at what kind of season we'd expect. But what is your feeling on where we are with analogs right now?
I mean, I'm trying to think because this year's still been just so weird that
We're
there.
thinking of the southern hemisphere. I don't have numbers in front of me, but maybe I am not talking about the huge El Nino of 2015, but the previous winter when we were just about getting into it.
Yeah, and that was that the one that produced Bansi and Eunice, or was that the next year?
That's right. Yeah, but maybe those ones probably won't count as much because I think the El Nino was in flow by then. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean the El
But
Nino's.
I think there's potential for at least one big storm down there.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the same thing. We're gonna probably get at least one pretty decent system. Well, the Southwest Indian Ocean usually is pretty much a lock for at least one major system per year, but this one probably could get up to a Category 4, Category 5 intensity this time around. Will it affect any land? We have
That's always
no
the big
clue.
question.
Not a lot of land in the Southwest Indian Ocean, so there's a high probability of that being no, but at the same time, it very well could. It's always rolling the dice there in the southern hemisphere because there's a lot of ocean, not a lot of land, but there's a lot of islands that it can hit, and And
All right,
typically the
I'll get
storms.
them.
Yep,
I'll
go.
get them to stay tuned on that because I'll do a little bit of research in the background here whilst you go on.
Alrighty. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to Yutu here and do the same thing that I did with Willa and potentially get a longer loop of it. This way we can see more of how the storm has progressed over the past 12 hours or so. And you'll see here just how quickly this thing has seemed to get organized. It was pretty much a nothing invest not too long ago, and you can see just how quickly the minus 80, minus 90 cloud tops have really bursted up from the center here. So this thing is definitely getting itself together in a very quick format and is expected to continue to get itself together in a very quick way. Uh, how quick will it end up being? We really don't know. If historical precedents are anything, by the time it gets to the Marianas Islands, probably a Cat 2, Cat 3, and then it'll end up going into the West Pacific to be a pretty significant system. I don't think it does have a pretty fast forward motion right now, so I don't quite think it'll get to major hurricane status before going through the Marianas Islands. However, it will reach a very high intensity category 4 at the very least as it moves into the central Western Pacific. It's still a pretty long way out before affecting any of the significant land masses. Uh, more than 5 days out from affecting Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, or wherever this thing ends up going. Probably most likely Japan if it hits anything. Um, but as of right now, it is still too far out to really tell exactly where this storm is going to end up hitting, or even which country it's going to end up hitting. Uh, Pretty much what's going on here is that this storm continues to blow up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a microwave image here, at least our latest microwave image. And you can see a very pronounced comma shape to this system. And that shows that it's really getting together very quickly. You can see a dark red right here on the western side of the eye wall. And the microwave imagery is typically pretty low resolution, so you're not going to get it right on the button every single time. So it might have missed the exact core. We're probably not getting into the core 100% there, but the next time that we do get uh, a microwave image, we are going to see likely that this storm's got a pretty pronounced core, and that's probably going to continue. I'm going to pull it up on Dvorak here, and you can pretty much see it looks like a circular cloud. And what this shows is this is a central dense overcast reading here with a likely embedded center. And usually that is suggestive of at least a typhoon strength storm. So I would not be surprised if the next advisories come out, this ends up getting upgraded to a typhoon via both the JTWC and the
Mm.
JMA. JTWC is expecting it to get up to typhoon status within the next 12 hours.
So I was just looking at that, just following up on that question about the Southwest Indian Ocean. Here's two seasons that most resemble the current conditions in play right now. 2002-3, Devon.
Okay.
That season had 14 depressions, 12 storms, including Kalund, which was the strongest storm that year. That was a Category 5 according to JTWC. I'm guessing we have it down as that on our analysis as well.
Yep.
Yep, 165. And the other one, 2004-5. are the
Okay.
ones to watch out for analogs in the Southwest Indian Ocean. That one had 15 depressions and 10 storms, 2 Cat 5s.
So it can be expected to be a reasonably active season, if that is to be understood.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to expect the Southwest Indian Ocean to be likely a pretty active one. Um, Storm Imagery also wants to know, why was Cyclone Josie retired? It did not strike anything.
Say that again.
Why was Cyclone Josie retired?
Oh, gee. That was a Fiji one, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Haven't a clue myself.
Yeah,
All I
sometimes.
remember is that there was the controversy at the time because there was a fake news channel posting the Fiji names before Fiji named them, so they changed their auxiliary list names, which I thought was quite funny.
Wow.
They actually did it because of that. I saw them make a
Yep.
statement.
Yep. Yeah, that's
Bad business to go naming storms before the officials do.
yeah, that's something that we definitely try to avoid here. Of course, Yutu
I
has
think we've
been
done it
named.
successfully.
Yep. So, yeah, you don't want to be naming storms before the officials do, because then that usually that grinds the officials' gears. It really does. It makes for a really bad public image at that point. Man,
Just a
I gotta say,
distraction.
the latest frames here, YouTube continues to get better and better with the latest frames. I don't know if you've seen it, but YouTube is looking really, really good right now.
I haven't. I need to get onto it.
Yep.
I'm still looking at Willa actually, and right in the middle of an eye wall replacement cycle at the moment. Eye temperature is actually 0 now.
Well, that's better eye temperature than I have. It's been in the positives for a while for me. I mean,
2
negatives,
actually, 2
negatives.
degrees.
It's been in the negatives for a while for me. And the eye,
Either way, certainly not a category 5
yeah, not at this
anymore.
point. And we're not going to get a plane into the storm to find out whether if it's a category 5 or not, because the recon that was scheduled to get into the storm by right now, which is why I kind of wanted to go
Believe it.
live right now, is because that's when the plane was supposed to get into the center of the storm. It got into the East Pacific and they turned right around. I don't know if they have turned back or not. I don't think they have. It does not appear that they have. No, they're going back. So clearly something wrong with the AF301. Not sure what that could be. But we are not getting a plane into this storm today. Maybe tomorrow when it's pretty much on top of Mexico, which I think that's when recon would be the least useful, because by then you're going to end up getting land, buoy, ship reports all over the place. But that's what we're going to have to do, is wait for tomorrow to get a plane into the storm, and that's just not going to be a good gauge of just how strong this storm was during its peak intensity. Borderline
Post-season analysis again.
Oh yeah, they'll put it up to 175
Wow,
with no
that would be
evidence.
something. I am now looking at that imagery of Yutu. Just waiting, you just wait for that moment that the eye pops out, don't you? But I think it's quite, at least borderline typhoon by now. It's got that structure around it as well.
Yep. And
Cloud top temperatures getting to minus 90 every so often.
yep. And it should be noted that like 6 to 8 hours ago, this thing was nothing. It was
Wasn't even on
basically
the
nothing.
radar.
Yeah, it wasn't even on the radar. It was a nothing, and now all of a sudden, poof, we got this massive storm here and the core is already forming. I mean, that is, for a weak system, that is very explosive intensification, to say the least. You,
Usually we have that explosive intensification on well-developed, storms that have already reached hurricane status or typhoon status.
yeah, it's very, very rare to see a storm end up blowing up from nothing to a hurricane. It's actually a lot harder to blow up from nothing to hurricane than it is to go from Cat 1 to Cat 5. It's actually a lot harder to end up doing that. I think the fastest that any storm has ever gotten from nothing to hurricane is 24 hours. And even then, maybe even 30 hours.
Which storm was that?
What was it? Humberto? I think it was Humberto 2007.
The one that struck Texas area?
Yeah.
Not sure what the Westpac record would be.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but I imagine it's somewhere in the same ballpark. Because I don't think you're going to get a storm that's going to intensify much faster than that 24-hour mark. It usually takes a good 24 hours to get itself together. But clearly, this storm, it ain't caring about that 24 hours because I think it just did it in 12, to be quite frank.
The intermediate advisory is out from the National Hurricane Center. They're keeping it at Category 5. Same wind speed, same pressure, 160 miles an hour, 925 millibars. No other changes as far as I can see.
Nope, and that's pretty much what they should have done. The storm's winds aren't going to automatically go down just because the satellite imagery ends up degrading for an hour or two. That's usually what happens during eyewall replacement cycles. Even though the satellite degrades a little bit, the wind speeds, they don't really go down too much, and usually what happens is, it's a rule in satellite analysis, is that you just keep the storm at whatever intensity it was at peak until you see that the storm, okay, it's continuing to maintain a lower appearance, then you put it down. But usually that takes 6 to 12 hours. And I think this storm is probably going to complete its eyewall replacement cycle by then.
Do you think we've gone far too knee-jerk these days with the rapid scan imagery?
I think that the rapid scan imagery has its place. I used it during the Michael live stream, mainly because it was just right up close to land, and it's better when it's like right up close to land. The rapid scan imagery tends to be very high resolution, and that will lead to overestimations if you're going to use a satellite image technique, unless you've calibrated your satellite image technique to have high resolution images, in which case
that's it.
that
You
it's
can't
fine.
compare it to old storms then, can you?
Exactly. You can't use, because the old storms you use, I'll just bring up an image here. You'll use an image like this, a really low resolution image, and we can pull, and I'll pull it up right now. You can pull up beautiful, right here off a slider on RAM. You could pull up these beautiful images right away. Up close, rapid scan images of these hurricanes. So here we go, right here with Goes East. Pull it up. That's what Willa looks like right there. And you can zoom in right on it. And that is a much better resolution than what you'll get on, let's say, a floater image from NOAA, or just on the regular storm page from RAM itself. So you can clearly see here too. You can see the bands very clearly in the storm. You can see the two eye walls as well very clearly on this image. And you don't necessarily see those details when you're looking at the lower resolution imagery. So it does have its use, definitely, and I think it makes for very good eye candy. But for actual tracking and forecasting, Mm, I don't know if that is it's necessarily useful for that. Uh, I don't know. What's your opinion on it?
Well, to do our satellite estimates that we currently do on Force 13, it's best and fairest to use the 4 kilometer resolution imagery, which is what the RAM floaters are. Um, and I don't know what it's going to be like in the next few months over the off season when we develop this new satellite technique as well. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
I'm still
So
curious looking at Yutu right now because it's now got not one but two little hot towers of minus 90 degrees.
and yeah, I see that. One pretty much right near the center, and one off to the north and east of it, from what I can see. And that
I just
is,
wonder if the center's in the middle of the two.
I. It's really hard to determine exactly where the center of circulation is in one of these storms. You can't exactly say that the center of circulation is the warmest cloud tops in the center, because that's
If
probably
you start
not
to
the
see them
center of it.
dancing around each other, though.
Yeah, if you start to see the swirl around it, then maybe. But it just because there is a little bit of a clearing in the middle of the CDO, that does not necessarily mean that's where the center of circulation is. So
We'll wait and see on that.
yeah, that's pretty much just a wait and see kind of thing.
Do we have
See,
any more questions?
yep, I was just looking in that. Nothing on topic.
Oh, get back on topic. Invite all your questions.
uh, did Michael become a strong windstorm in Europe?
Well, what did it do? I wasn't even watching. It
Eh,
sort of arrived in Spain and I don't think did much.
I don't remember it doing much either. So, and
That's all we can offer on that question.
now everyone's talking if Michael should be a category 4 and 5.
Well, it's a very topical discussion. It is the last storm we
Yep.
had before Willa.
Yep. Well, Force 13 analysis, if I remember correctly, put the storm at 160 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
there you go. That's our stance on the storm. Of course, there will
I just
be.
can't see how the NHC won't upgrade that.
I think they absolutely will upgrade it.
Considering they put Matthew at 165, I can't see them going less than that.
Yep.
Even though I wouldn't agree with that. 160.
Yeah, I can definitely see them getting and putting up to 160 at landfall. Regardless, 155, 160. I mean, it's basically this
Doesn't
generation's
matter to
Camille.
those on the ground.
Yep. It's basically this generation's Camille either way. I mean, just what an impressive storm that was. And again, for the sea surface temperatures that it's currently over, Willa is also quite the impressive storm because, again, it's currently over barely 28 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures, and you usually don't see a category 5 in anything underneath 29.
Well, what I
And
said when this storm was first developing, if it gets to Kenner intensity, it's performed a bigger feat than both Kenner and Patricia did.
yeah, and Kenna, I think, was 165, if I remember correctly. So it hasn't gotten to Kenna, but it is still a crazy feat that it is even gotten this strong. And I'm honestly surprised. I am honestly surprised that this
Not on a
storm
par
has
with
gotten
that.
as strong as it has gotten. I'm impressed. You have impressed me. And that tends to be difficult to do.
Indeed. Did we mention those rainfall estimates?
Yep, I mentioned the rainfall estimates. I will repeat them in
I must have
the.
been paying attention. So for
Yep.
people like me who didn't pay attention,
Yep. Well, I did say them, so I'll just repeat them real quick. In the areas where there are hurricane warnings currently out, rainfall is likely going to be. Live stream feed just cut out. There we go. Back on now. Thank you, Windows, for telling me that the stream cut out. Am I still here?
we're here. Yep.
Okay, good. Anyways, I don't know how much got through. So everywhere in the hurricane warning area, 6 to 10 inches of rain with local rainfall amounts of up to a foot. Probably 2 to 6 inches of rain in the tropical storm warning areas. Um, the bigger question is how much rainfall is this going to produce into the Texas region, because they recently got
Hmm.
over 2 feet of rainfall in a very short amount of time. Record flooding is currently going on in Texas right now, so they don't need any more rain. But from the estimates that I saw, it's going to add another 2 inches of rain, and it's in an area that really doesn't need it right now. So I would actually be more concerned about flooding in Texas from this storm than I would be from the potential landslides that can occur from landfall in Mexico.
And those quite often are killers in these locations, Central America into Mexico, landslides, mainly due to that terrain, isn't it?
Yes, and landslides are always going to be a problem because, again, I'll pull up the topographic map. You can see the mountains rise up very quickly from the coastline. Doesn't even take it doesn't even take 100 miles to inland, and you're already up over a mile in height. I don't even think it
Wow.
takes. I don't even think it takes 50 miles inland, and you're already up over a mile in height. It's
Kills
very.
storms, but causes different problems.
Yep. So yeah, landslides are always going to be a threat. Obviously, if you're in a landslide prone area, take of the appropriate precautions. However, again, I think probably the biggest threat is going to be more rainfall in an area that really doesn't need it in Texas, and also the potential snowfall that is going to occur in the northeastern United States. The biggest threat at the landfall right now for Mexico is going to be the wind. There's no question about that. That's going to be the biggest threat. I don't think rain's going to be a huge threat. It's going to be similar to Kenna or Patricia, where it wasn't necessarily a big rainmaker, but massive amounts of wind is going to be the big problem from this system.
Additionally, a dangerous storm surge is expected as well. They don't give a number, so I'm not sure what you'd expect from that.
Well, I will give you a number right now. It is currently a stage 7 on the cyclone destruction potential scale, and it is moving up off to the north at about 7 miles an hour. And given that it's going to drop about a foot of rain, it is likely to weaken as it gets towards Mexico, as I've already said. So it's very likely that it's going to drop down to a stage 6 for landfall. But it's very unclear how much the wind speed's going to drop. So it's going to be kept as stage 7 for now. And just to put that in perspective, Michael was also a stage 7 at landfall. So there you go. But it's likely to weaken before landfall, probably going to go back down to a 6. So the actual landfall impact is probably going to be less than what we saw with Michael if it were to make landfall in the same area. Of course, this area of Mexico You wouldn't expect the infrastructure to necessarily be very good. And we also have the Islas Marias Islands, which the storm should be passing, if not directly over, very, very close to them. And they're probably going to get the worst of the winds from this storm.
That's not good.
No.
And I think we should also clarify with regards to Tropical Storm Yutu, threat to the Philippines is nil. Threat to mainland Japan is, I would say, very low still.
Okay. So, no threat to the Philippines.
We hope not.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not a
they've
man
already.
cut.
Yeah, it's not gonna do a man cut, I wouldn't think. It is gonna go pretty far north. It's supposed to make a turn to the north once it gets to the Marianas Islands. However, it's unclear where it's going to go after that day 5. Um we have another person asking, will Willa cross into the Gulf and regenerate? I think we've already ruled that out. Uh,
Yep.
I it's not going to regain tropical characteristics once it is in the Gulf. That does not mean that it's not going to produce rain along the Gulf Coast. 2 to 4 inches of rain likely wherever this storm goes. So over Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Gulf Coast, probably all 2 to 4 inches of rain there. And then the potential snowfall I've already shown to the northeast. We could end up seeing potentially up to a foot or two of snow in northern Maine.
Does that normally happen around now?
It's early. It's pretty early. It's actually going to be, it's actually very early for it to be doing this.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just
temperatures,
happened before,
temperatures.
though, in the Atlantic. The first snow comes from a hurricane in some parts of the northern
Yep.
part of the US and
It.
Canada.
I'm not going to say that it can't happen. Usually that happens from November storms. Um, but I guess it is late October, so I guess it kind of isn't out of the question. I mean, Sandy brought snow to us, or to some areas at least. I think West Virginia, not us, but West Virginia brought snow there. So, and you also had Ida also becoming a pretty powerful nor'easter.
Yeah.
But that was a November storm if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So,
nor either.
there you go. Um see what else is going on here.
Well, I'm just still looking at more imagery of U2, and its roundedness has certainly disappeared in
Yes.
latest frames.
Uh
And whether it's going to be more of a spiral banding system now.
someone just asked, could we see the first ever Pacific Category 5 landfall ever? No. I'm just gonna say that right now. It's not gonna happen. It's gonna weaken pretty considerably before landfall. I'd be surprised if it even makes it to landfall as a Cat 4, but like,
Mm.
landfall's still not expected to happen for another day or so. So
GFS has landfall at 972 millibars, which would suggest what, category 2?
yeah, very very much weakening the storm. So we'll see just how much this storm ends up weakening tomorrow. It's already reached an impressive intensity, no doubt about that. But right now, I'd say that the biggest concern is with the Islas Marias Islands because they're likely going to get a very good smack of this storm at Category 4 intensity. The speed and direction of Willa as of the latest National Hurricane Center advisory Storm is moving due north at 7 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. So due north, 7 miles an hour.
Not looked at imagery of that for a while, so I'm gonna check back
It's
again and have another look.
it's pretty much due north. Some people are saying that it's traveling north east northeast. No, it's pretty much traveling due north, maybe a slight wobble to the east, but pretty much due north for right now. And the cone expects this due north situation to continue for a while as it passes very close to the Islas Marias Islands in just 18 hours, as you can see on that point on the cone. And then you can see the landfall probably about a day out, give or take.
Yeah, movements north. The eye is still fading away a little. It's certainly shrunk.
Yep.
That latest frame, there's a burst of convection on the west. Eye temperature's now down to -9. Top of the hour, it was +2.
And the eye temperature is going to continue to wane as the system continues its eye wall replacement cycle. But
This is what
anyways,
we were all hoping for because we may never get back to those heights.
yeah, I don't think it will. I mean, technically, it is passing over warmer waters, and we've seen storms just blow up right on the shelf in warm waters. So hopefully, it doesn't do that. But I don't. We'll have to see what happens. The next 6 hours is going to be pretty critical for how strong this storm ends up making landfall at. Intensity predictions are always a crapshoot. You never really know exactly how strong a storm is going to be. You just note trends and you expect the trends to be followed pretty much.
I was just reading some comments.
Yep. Anyways, that pretty much concludes the hour of live streaming here. Although we do have one more comment here that asks, "What is your most favorite hurricane, typhoon, cyclone from this year?"
Oh, God. Oh, it's too early to ask that question, but what I will tell you, if there's anyone from the National Hurricane Center watching right now, paragraph 1 of your discussion is still incorrect, I'm sorry to say.
Yes. Um, this is, yeah.
They corrected the key message number 2 in the discussion when they accidentally called it Michael, but they've still accidentally called it Wilma in that same discussion.
Yeah, and they're still saying an Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft is currently en route to Wilma,
Well,
and we're not
that's
getting a
2 errors there
hurricane.
because it's not en route.
Yeah, well, it was en route
Yeah,
at the time of posting that, but it's not going into the storm, unfortunately.
shame.
Uh, But anyways, that will conclude this 1 hour of coverage from Force 13. There will be updates in the future, so just keep your eyes out on the channel. If you would like to contact us here on Force 13 outside of the stream, we have outlets to do that on Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and Discord. I just pulled that up on the stream there. And if you want to email us, we also have an email address. And I did not want to do that. And now the live streaming page is being very awful to me. Anyways, that will conclude this hour of broadcast. And keep your eye out on the channel for further updates. Stay safe.
About 2 hours, I think. 2 hours.
2 hours.